Hey, Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in. I just want to say super sorry that we weren't able to come actually live. There seems to be an issue between Zoom and Facebook right now. So you are getting this after the fact. Do apologize, but it's still going to be as fabulous as ever because I have an amazing guest and I will be bringing her into the conversation shortly. We are just bringing her in to Instagram. Hey, Instagram family. Thank you so much for your patience. As always, we always seem to have a start with technical issues. My guest is there. So I will do what I normally do, guys, first of all, and that is to, give us an opportunity to just introduce this fabulous lady, someone that you all know, and those who don't know, you're going to get the opportunity to know a little bit more about her outside of the world that she and I share. Welcome, welcome, welcome to a very special Facebook and Instagram live session where I'll be chatting with the ever fabulous Hina Ansari. Yay!
Yay!
Oh my God, we are live. So guys, Hina, as you know, is the longtime editor-in-chief of Anoki Life and the Anoki List. She's also the co-host of Anoki Uncensored, a radio show that we do on Dash Radio's Ruckus Avenue radio station, which can also be heard on iTunes and Spotify. So if you guys haven't checked that out, go to anokilife.com/Anoki Uncensored and go check out the episodes that are archived there, because honestly, Hina and the other co-host, our lovely Ruchika, have really great, meaningful, fun, quirky, deep conversations with each other and also with a number of guests. So now that I've done the plugging of Anoki, I just wanted to also add, guys, that in addition to her, time with us here at Anoki, which has surpassed a decade. Yes. Woo. Some of you may not be aware that Hina is a veteran fashion journalist with a career trajectory that takes her back to the early days of one of Canada's most iconic fashion magazines, Flair. There she actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hina, but you were the first South Asian to ever enter mainstream print glossy in Canada. Am I correct when I say that? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that was a number of decades ago, folks. Now at Flair, so at Flair, Hina worked her way up the ranks under the pupillage of, in my opinion, and I'm sure also I'm speaking on behalf of Hina when I say this, one of Canada's greatest ever editor-in-chiefs, Suzanne Boyd, who now, of course, heads up Zuma Editorial, the massive empire that's out there. In addition to this, Hina has worked with Toronto Star, the Royal Ontario Museum, and held many other highly acclaimed positions throughout her almost, dare I say, 3-decade-long career.
Oh my gosh. Can we do like 2.5?
Absolutely, whatever you like, darling. I'm super psyched to have you live today with me, Hina. And why is obviously because you're going to be talking to me a little bit with, of course, our communities here at Instagram and of course on Facebook about this fabulous feature-length documentary that you put out last week online called the Style Atlas Jakarta. So before we begin, I just kind of want to bring people into the world of, the area of fashion that you decided to kind of spotlight with this feature, and that is modest wear. For those who are uninitiated and don't actually know what that form of fashion is, do you want to just explain a little bit about what modest wear actually is?
Sure. So modest wear, kind of the basic tenets of modest wear is covering certain areas of your body and making sure that certain curves of your body is not known. And it is something that has been part of Islamic culture from the dawn of time. And so you're looking at, kind of like a modest neck, long sleeves, obviously hiding your legs. And then, of course, the curve of your body has to be hidden as well. So, we're looking at looser garments. And so traditionally, coming from the Middle Eastern, South Asian markets, you have the burqas and the abayas, where it just drapes you completely so you can't kind of see the silhouette of your body. Now that has obviously become a lot more, you could say, modern, in the sense of the modest wear kind of taking on the current trends, where the loose philosophy still stands, but it's not so just black and brown. It's a lot more colorful now, and it's a lot more, you can kind of transition back and forth with looser tunics and maxi skirts and kaftans and that sort of thing. So that's really what modest wear, the beginnings of modest wear and the traditional modest wear, that's what it is.
So Hina, I mean, you just mentioned that initially it used to be more like black and brown, and then now it's kind of transitioned into, you know, having elements of, you know, modern day fashion in terms of kind of, I'm assuming, cuts on some level, colors definitely.
Level. Absolutely, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's a reflection of the different generations that have adopted the modest wear. So, you know, obviously when you take a look at your grandparents' age and the countries that they came from, modest wear was very limited in the sense of the complete black, complete brown, very subdued colors, no prints, you know, kind of taking a play on the modest form of the color palette, basically.
Right.
And then, you know, then you see, you know, their children becoming a little more adventurous with their wear, but still keeping the modest philosophy intact. And then the grandchildren, which would be our generation, taking a step further, keeping the modest philosophy intact, but experimenting it even more with different textiles and patterns and fabrics, and really kind of celebrating the different cultural textiles that we are familiar with respect to the cultural heritage that we come from. You know, for me, being Indian Pakistani, we have certain textile that we are kind of drawn to. And then of course it's different when it comes to the Middle Eastern community. There's certain textiles that they're drawn to, but it really gives an opportunity to be able to parlay that into their everyday wear while still keeping the modest philosophy intact.
Right. So let me ask you, I mean, for those people who aren't as familiar with kind of the history, black and brown, why those colors? Like, what was the rationale or reasoning behind why those were the colors that, you know, typically were picked?
They were picked mainly to exude a sense of modesty. So you don't want to be going out onto a street in a flashy, Poochie printed abaya. You know, you kind of wanted to divert the eyes.
That sounds kind of cool.
I know, that's something I would wear. So you want to kind of divert the attention away from you and divert the gaze away from you, the male gaze specifically, away from you. And in order to do that is to try to become as, I don't want to say kind of disappear into the crowd, but you kind of want to exude a sense of modesty with the very neutral, very plain color palettes. And black, and of course, the accessibility of the fabrics as well. You know, black is a lot more accessible than a fancy print too. So that plays into the cultural and the economic as well. But that's really the reason why it's more of being modest, of course, with respect to the appearance, but also how you portray that appearance with color.
Right, absolutely. So where did kind of that change start to, you know, come into, you know, into being, and, you know, and where we can kind of say that a quote unquote industry was starting to be formed?
Well, I know personally speaking, the hijab, taking a look at the hijab specifically as an example of how that has really kind of trickled into the mainstream world. That has always been kind of the accessory to experiment since I would say probably in the last 15 years or so, but that's internally within our community. We all kind of knew that. We would see different hijabs and different colors and patterns and borders and different ways of pinning it using different pieces of jewelry. That has always been the case. But when it comes to mainstream, kind of recognizing the hijab specifically, and then of course, trickling it into the modest wear industry as a whole, that really started in the last, I would say about 5 years or so, probably 5 to 7 years or so, when mainstream designers understood the monetary kind of value of the Middle Eastern market. And they started releasing Ramadan capsule collections in the Middle East, in Dubai. You know, Dolce & Gabbana in 2016 launched a whole abaya, hijab, capsule collection. And then that followed with DKNY doing it, Oscar de la Renta did it, Tommy Hilfiger, Mango, Monique Lhuillier, Diane von Furstenberg, because I knew the market in the Middle East, as well as Malaysian, Singapore, that area of Asia, that was a market that was really untapped. And those were the markets that had the money. And they were looking for something just to refresh their wardrobe. And they wanted to be, recognized and say, we've got money to spend and we don't want to wear these black abayas. So you need to do something. And these designers recognized that. So that was the turning point. Since then, you started seeing more and more mainstream designers really kind of taking part. Mainstream in the sense of H&M, for instance, they released an ad featuring a hijab-wearing Londoner by the name of Mariah Idrisi.
Yes,
and
I remember
also,
that.
Right, exactly. And then you had Vogue, British Vogue, in the first time in 102 years history, where they featured a Somali-American model by the name of Halima Aden.
Yeah.
And that just kind of made, and this was in the last couple of years, and that just kind of made headlines all over the world, where you could see the hijab becoming kind of the pinnacle of modest wear. It was kind of the gateway that kind of opened the modest wear industry to the mainstream world. And then, of course, CoverGirl had hijabi beauty blogger Noura Alfi in 2017, becoming that. And then you keep going further with Uniqlo and Gap, and you kind of see mainstream really kind of capturing it, in terms of understanding the market, and that it's not just in the Middle East and Asia, it's in America as well. And that was the big change, where you really saw this incredible visibility of the modest wear scene, really, which started with the recognition of the hijab and respecting it and understanding it and realizing that there is this huge market out there that needs it. I mean, there's this one stat which I've been dying to share with you because
tell me, stat queen, tell me.
I'm all about the stats. So here's one stat which I found. So they were saying that this was in insiderretail.com. It's a trade magazine out in Australia, and I found this quite fascinating. That 1 billion, with a B, under 30 Muslims today has been instrumental in shifting the attitudes towards modest wear in recent years, thanks to social media.
Yes, of course.
Exactly. And then they even went further, and they said the Me Too movement has also shifted the fashion narrative to dressing for self rather than for the male gaze. And frivolous outfitting is not what many turn to in times of political uncertainty. And so I found that incredibly fascinating, because so many political aspects of it also turned to the hijab and brought the hijab forward. Specifically speaking, obviously, with Donald Trump and his political ideology. And you saw a lot of designers really pushing the hijab and inclusivity and respect. And so it's fascinating to see how in the last few years or so, it just became mainstream. There was no question. And, the naysayers were there, but they didn't care. They were like, no, we need to be inclusive and understand that this market exists, and we need to cater to that market.
Absolutely. And, I'm fascinated by your stat. Just want to kind of talk to you about that, Hina.
Yeah.
There really is 1 billion under 30 Muslims out there on this planet. I mean, wow.
I know, right? I was like, holy moly.
It's about time that they get, visibility out there. And it's incredible because, you're right. I mean, when you go on social media, they are so prevalent and in an industry where you wouldn't really even think that they would be in, if you have this kind of preconceived prejudicial notion of what you think an Islamic woman is, because they're pretty much all of them are in beauty. They're all in the beauty space.
All of them in the beauty space. And if you think about it, the reason is that the face, and this is something which I really noticed when I went to Egypt like a million years ago, was that they were all covered. Hijab and the abayas and the kaftans, all of that. So the only area where they could really shine and have fun with and really was the beauty.
Yes.
That was really because that was the only exposed area of the body. And so they just went to town, and I was like, yeah, that makes complete sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here we are sitting in the world of modest wear, which is such a pop industry right now, especially for people who are huge fashionistas and they follow the scenes out there. I mean, you cannot not know about modest wear. So what I want to ask you now, Hina, is really, why did you, on a personal level, feel that you needed to shine a mainstream light on this niche industry? Because, you know, not everyone is going to be the client of modest wear, right?
Sure.
And maybe I'm wrong when I say that. Maybe I'm, you know, I don't really know the facts, and that's why I'm hoping that you can kind of shed some light on this. Is it just an industry that Islamic women are partaking in? Of course, albeit the largest, you know, portion of, you know, clients are going to be from that specific group. But is it just Muslim women that are into modest wear? Because I got to tell you, girlfriend, I'm a Sikh Hindu girl, born and brought up in England, quite the kind of feminist, you know, if I don't mind saying so myself, as you know, and I love modest wear fashion.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, modest wear fashion really kind of, yes, it's definitely getting traction now with the Islamic connection, 100%. And I love that. I mean, someone's got to do it. Let us be us. I'm ready.
I agree.
But with the modest wear attire itself, if you take a look at the Jewish community, the Orthodox Jewish community, they also have very similar modest wear philosophies.
Yes.
As well as the very Orthodox Christian community, they also have very similar modest wear philosophies. So even though right now it's very much connected to Islam, when you take a look at the mainstream coverage, modest wear in a sense has always been around. It just never had that platform until now.
Right, absolutely. And that's a really interesting point to bring up, Hina, because people just assume that modest wear is something that is exclusive to the, you know, Islamic faith, when obviously it's not. It's not so much, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not so much faith-based as it is an ideology of how to wear garments more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the interpretation kind of varies depending on who you ask. There is a faith-based element to it, which really is modesty what it is. But in terms of what is modesty can differ from one person to the next, from one academic scholar to the next. And that's the variety that we have, that, you know what, we love. We love the fact that there are different interpretations, and you have to adjust that interpretation to what it fits right for you.
Absolutely.
But personally speaking, I come from a very moderate background, very moderate family, and I love modest wear because it's more comfort for me.
Yeah.
I love the loose tunics, and I love mixing it up, and, you know, that sort of thing. And I think that is something that a lot of people are finding, non-South Asians as well as South Asians, non-Muslims, non-Jewish, as well as the others.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Style Atlas Jakarta. Before we begin, what I want to ask you, Hina, is I want to know why Jakarta per se, before we actually talk about why you decided to do this documentary.
Well, the reason being is that I had a blog. I've always been interested in global fashion. That has always kind of been my thing. And coming from a fashion publishing background, we've always covered Milan, Paris, New York, London, Toronto. But I always felt that there was something missing from that conversation. So personally speaking, whenever I would travel, I would always look for a local designer and kind of talk to them and find out what their inspirations were and what their aesthetics were and that sort of thing. And I found a very interesting thread. And so with that being said, I said, you know what, I want to launch a blog. So I launched a blog a bunch of years ago, and it was called ramp1885.com. And
yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and it's still up there if you want to check it out. It's not updated, but it's still up there.
So what's it called again, Hina? Say it a little slower.
Yes, ramp1885.com. So the runway, ramp.
Just tell them why 1885. There's a significance there, and then please carry on.
Yeah, so rumor has it that in 1885 was when the first runway was used to showcase a fashion designer.
Right.
And that's why I just kind of love that connection, and it's a little vague and mysterious, and it's like, okay, let's do that. Yeah.
It's a great publicity story, really.
Yeah. So then I had stories coming in from all over the world, from Sana'a, Yemen, from Buenos Aires, from Sydney, Australia, from Lahore, from India, from Goa, from Panama City, and Rome, and like everywhere. And they were sending me stories of local mom and pop store openings, or featuring a designer, or doing runway like trend reports from their fashion weeks, like from Kazakhstan, and you know, all the wonderful, wonderful places around the world. And one of the places that really popped in my head was Jakarta. And their fashion week I found complete, and I didn't know any of this stuff before. This was really an educational tool for me. And when I saw Jakarta, I was like, this is so amazing, because modest wear, 100%, and modern wear, they had a really great balance of the two. But the textiles they used, and the cuts they used, and the way they incorporated their heritage into their outfits, into the way the designers, you know, put these looks together. I was just mesmerized. And so I met up with my producer friend, Ali Mashiaki, who is the producer for the Style Atlas Jakarta, and is kind of my right-hand guy who made this happen.
Yeah.
And we were just talking, and he just came back from Tokyo doing a bunch of video shoots in Tokyo. He does a lot of work in Japan. And we were just talking about doing a documentary, and he knew about my Ramp blog. And we said, let's do one on one of these countries. And I thought, holy smokes, that's brilliant.
Yes.
Let's do it on Jakarta, because everyone's talking about the hijab, and people don't know what they're talking about. This is, you know, like a few years back.
Yeah.
And let's just kind of educate and show people that, you know what, even though we have no idea, there is a robust industry over there that does not need any help from the West. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we need to really showcase them. And let's see if we can go there and do a whole documentary and talk about how society and their politics and their political positioning and the economy and religion, in this case, fosters a local fashion scene.
Right.
And that's why we decided on going to Jakarta.
And it's interesting because a lot of people who aren't, you know, very, you know, vested in the ideologies and mechanisms behind the fashion industry, oftentimes think it's just art and, you know, creative people coming together and deciding on the fate of fashion. But it's so much more than that. You, as a fashion journalist, you know this, Hina. There are so many other elements, you know, socio-economic elements. You know, what is the economy of the country? Is there a war happening right now? You know, is there a surplus of money? You know, religious elements, you know, and all kinds of other ideologies that actually go into defining the fashion scene in any given season, right?
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
And it's interesting that, you know, modest wear is finally getting its, you know, day in the sun. And it's awesome that it's getting its day in the sun by, you know, the modest wear wearing client, as we've already mentioned. So you decided that Jakarta was where you wanted to kind of tell that story. And as a, you know, as a journalist that is always kind of, you know, hinging her ideologies around kind of the power and impact of storytelling, you know, your documentary is very much a storytelling journey into, you know, initiating people into the understanding of what modest wear is, and, you know, what's actually happening out there, you know, in the market that you chose, of course, Jakarta. Talk to me about what happened next. I mean, you know, here you are, you had this discussion. How did you take the discussion into reality? Because obviously the first thing you got to think about is funding.
I know, yeah. That was definitely the first thing we knew. Like, we need to, how are we going to get ourselves there?
Right.
And so Ali he's like a master at crowdsourcing. He's been doing it for all of his other film clients and for his own film project as well. And I'm very reluctant to do anything like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to ask people. And
right. It's that whole Indian, it's that Indian Pakistani mentality. It's like, oh my God, you know, you can't do that. It's the pride thing, isn't it, that we're taught?
Oh my God, it was totally that. And let me tell you, yeah. And I had some pushback too from certain people. Like, you can't be asking aunties and uncles, and you can't be.
Yeah, family is not going to be cool with you even addressing the fact that you're quote unquote begging for money, which is the way they look at it, but it's not.
No, it's not.
Because every single business in the world has been created on some sort of money being borrowed or invested or loaned or something. But, you know, but for some reason, our families seem to not feel comfortable about, you know, the crowdfunding scenario, which I really don't get. But anyway, you got the pushback, but you did it anyway.
But we did it anyways. We had a goal. We wanted to reach it. We exceeded it. It was total crowdfunding. And thank you to all of my friends and family from here and all over the world who donated whatever they can, which was great.
Of course.
Then we had private investors that came on board, which really helped us kind of reach the finish line. And it was wonderful. We were able to, we were able to kind of get what we needed to get. And it's a very small budget. So it's not like I crowdsourced, you know, like $100,000. We did this with, you know, God, it was like 40 grand.
Wow. And that includes flights, hotels, and
everything.
How did you do that, girlfriend?
Well, you know what? We shot budget.
Right.
But we wanted
but it doesn't look like it.
That's it. We wanted to make sure it didn't look like that it wasn't budget. And we had an incredible, Ali put together an incredible crew of award-winning Canadian filmmakers, cinematographers, sound artists, and that sort of thing. So that really helped as well.
Of course.
And then, of course, we shopped around for the best deal to get to Jakarta.
Yes.
Was, you know, is a whole job in itself.
Where were you, in the luggage department, Hina? Were you in the luggage department?
Exactly. We're like, we'll just add an extra suitcase so this can come and this can come. But yeah, we were able to, we managed to, I don't know, to be honest, looking back, it's like, holy smokes, I can't believe we managed to pull all that off, but we did. We had our great crew. We managed to get there. And of course, you know, a lot of points were used for a lot of different things.
Of course.
And, you know, we really kind of scrounged together and did it. Because you know what it is? We were also passionate, and we all wanted to do this, and we wanted to make it right. And we were representing Canada in Jakarta, so we didn't want to be walking around not knowing what we were doing. And
right.
You know, who are these people, yahoos, that don't know what they're doing? We needed to make sure that we were professional. We had a focus kit. We did the whole outreach, did all of that. So that's how we got there. And we wanted to do it with Jakarta Fashion Week being the background. So we had a specific window of time.
Right.
To be able to go, and believe it or not, we shot the whole thing in 6 days.
Oh my gosh.
It was insane.
My gosh. I don't know how you did that, because, you know, guys out there, you know, if you guys haven't watched this, you just really got to go out and watch it. It's on YouTube. Hina, exactly where do they go? Because they're going to get real context after this conversation if they haven't already watched it. You know, truly, how did you accomplish this? Because it's a feature-length documentary, and it's so well told. It's so well packaged that, you know, it seems like someone like a Netflix, you know, gave you money or something for it. It's ridiculous how well you did this. Yeah. We really, so people can go on YouTube. It's called the Style Atlas Jakarta. It's fully ready, open. Go on YouTube, type in the Style Atlas Jakarta, and you will see it all up there. And it's 40 minutes, so it's not a 3-hour length film. Don't worry about your time. You can totally do it in 40 minutes, family friendly. Feel free to share this with your family. And it's just a great, you know what, I'm so proud of my team, because these guys did such, an amazing job. The stuff that, let me tell you a little story. So we get there, and we went on 2 different flights. And one flight had my cameraman and most of the equipment. Right. And a couple of assistants. And then I came in early, so I was there before. And then Ali, my producer, came in separately. So 3 different flights. You're being asked, Hina, if you could pin the link here in the chat. You want to take a moment to just head on over to YouTube and just pin it so everybody has it here. Thank you so much, Inside Talk. Thank you. Okay. We're going to take that moment to just do it right now. Please hang on. Let me do this right now. Yeah, you do that right now while I carry on chatting with everybody. For those of you who are just joining us, Hina actually is the creator of this incredible modest wear story that's called the Style Atlas Jakarta. She launched it last week online on YouTube, and she's just about to pin the link right now in Instagram, Facebook. We'll also pin it for you guys in the comments, so look out for that. And it's a really interesting look at an industry in fashion that has been niche for so many years. It's a relatively new industry, but just with the power of, you know, the female Muslim woman, and just kind of, you know, the impact of social media and the influencers out there, there's really been kind of this incredible, you know, popping pop cultural element to what modest wear actually has become. And Hina, who is, of course, you guys know, is the editor-in-chief of Anoki and has been with us for over 10 years. She's actually the brainchild behind coming up with the idea of doing this. And, you know, there it is, guys. She just posted it right there. You can see, and we're just going to be bringing Hina right back in. So give me a second.
You got it. I hope it works. I'm here we go.
All right, Hina, we're just bringing you back in, darling. I know that you were probably, there you are.
Yeah,
you were probably using your mobile when you were doing that, because we lost you for a minute.
That's why, yes, sorry about that.
Perfect. So there you have it, guys. It's right there in the link. Just please make sure you go check it out, really. And we're going to carry on talking kind of behind the scenes of how this all came about, because anyone out there who is a filmmaker on any capacity know how hard it is to kind of, first of all, get the funding, second of all, kind of get the support of, you know, various different, you know, industries and, you know, dare I say, because you haven't talked about this yet, Hina, political, you know, organizations, especially when you're doing it internationally. You want to talk about that a little bit? Like, did you have to kind of go to the tourist board? Was there anything kind of involved from that perspective? Or did you just kind of stick with going straight to the fashion week there in Jakarta and do it that way? What did you do?
Actually, the first thing we did was go to the tourism board, because we wanted to, you know, make sure that they knew that we were doing it. It's a completely positive film, and we wanted to help us out to get us connected to various industry leaders and local offices that we might need. So they were very, very helpful. So that was definitely the first thing that we did. And then once we had that kind of laid out, so we had that group working on connecting us to the different, you know, like the National Heritage Museum, the Museum of Textiles in Jakarta. So obviously that's the tourism board. And of course, Jakarta, you know, they're not all the organizations have a website. Right. Or have a, you know what I mean? So you kind of need to have that extra push to be able to kind of get through with a legitimate resource. So that was that. And then we just hit up Google, and I started Googling different designers and the top ones of the year, or the ones to look out for, or the ones that kind of captured my attention. I found a whole bunch on Instagram, then connected through them. And then of course, through Jakarta Fashion Week, connected with them directly, because of course that's, you know, they're the ones that had all the designers that were premiering in their shows. And, you know, wanted to talk to publishing executives that were part of Jakarta Fashion Week, the designers that were being a part of the Fashion Week, even backstage kind of experts that we can talk to. So the Jakarta Fashion Week officials were fantastic. They welcomed us with open arms, gave us exactly what we needed, even more. They delivered even above and beyond. And it was great. It was a great collection of different efforts from different groups of people that made it happen.
You know, I think that is also a testament to the fact that you had many years at Flair, having to figure out how to get, you know, behind the door of fashion weeks, you know, a lot of the kind of exclusives that you had to kind of come up with. So I think that you probably, you know, used a lot of that wealth and wisdom to kind of figure out how to tap into this very untapped market of Jakarta's fashion week that nobody knew about, you know, at least in the mainstream, until you came out with this incredible documentary about it. So let me take you back to that point before we got the question from one of our wonderful viewers here. What happened in that aeroplane? You had two different airplanes. Yes.
Yeah. So we had about 6 days set to shoot.
Right.
We lost a day and a half because there was a cyclone around Hong Kong, and that diverted one of the planes, which had our cameraman and a couple of our assistants and our equipment.
So where did they end up?
They ended up in Hong Kong.
Oh
They were going
my
through Hong Kong. They
gosh.
ended up in Hong Kong for 24 hours. The poor guys, they had no access to anything. They were like eating out of vending machines that were still there.
Oh,
Sleeping on the floor for the entire 24 hours. They finally managed to get on the flight and get to Jakarta. So me and Ali are sitting here. We're like, oh my goodness, these poor guys. And we didn't care about the movie. We just wanted to make sure they were safe.
of
But we were
course.
like, but then we're like, man, we only have like 5 days left to shoot, and then the first day was completely write-off. So I had to reschedule all of the appointments because the first
Right.
day these guys were landing, that one day was lost.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of excitement in the beginning of shooting the cyclone. Yes.
So let me ask you something, Hannah. And being that you're the journalist that you are, and the fact that you're a stats-based journalist, you like to make sure that you've gotten everything right. Anyone that's a part of the world of Anoki Uncensored would know that. She is the woman that comes out with a list long of stats on any theme or topic that we talk about there. So I want to ask you this. Did you kind of pre-plan exactly what it is that you wanted to shoot? Or did you kind of, okay, so you've already said yes, because I was going to say, because some people kind of have a loose plan and then they kind of fill in the gaps depending on what they're able to accomplish. Others have a very kind of strict mandate as to what they want to make sure they're able to get. Where were you in between those? Like in between them, where were you?
I was in between. I
had a feeling.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. I was in between because obviously we needed to make sure we had our storyboard, the designers that we were going to interview, why were we interviewing them, what areas of modest fashion or modern fashion were they representing, obviously setting up all the other interviews with the different publishing houses, because that has to be done ahead of time. You can't just show up and say, hey, I want to interview the editor-in-chief of Chloe and Denisha. Can we do that now? No, you got to do this ahead of time.
Of course.
And of course, you want to present a respectful face, so and show that you're legit. So I had all the letters with my bio and what we're asking for, and it took me back to my Flair days when I would do the same, asking for designer access during the fashion weeks.
Of
same
course. Of course.
Yes. So this time around, when we got there, we had, like I said, for instance, when the first day was lost because of the cyclone, we had to change all of that. And then of course everyone's schedules became, they weren't available on the other day, and then we had to redo that.
So what happened? So once they landed, you had 5 days to go.
5 days to go.
Yeah.
And we just started shooting. We had 2 cameramen. So one camera guy was shooting all the B-roll. So he was out and about shooting the city scenes and all of that stuff. And then the main camera guy and myself, we were together and we were going through and shooting kind of the different interviews that we had set up. And then of course, we had to make kind of mentally leave space for things that will go wrong, because they will go wrong.
Of course.
And then when that does happen, you have to get into problem solving mode and then just go into say, okay, you know what, we couldn't get this interview, but we got this interview. Let's just shift the focus and move it over here and do it that way.
Right.
But one thing which I found really interesting, and again, this is my first film. So, I love movies. I watch movies. I dissect movies, but I've never made one. And it's a whole other ball game. And Ali, who has made a million of these, he's like, okay, you know what? We need certain storylines to percolate. And we need certain, arcs to happen.
Right.
Like, what's an arc? Like, what are you talking about? And, and I'm like, okay, I get it. So, when you take a look at a documentary film, you kind of see, certain conflicts that happen, and then those conflicts get resolved, and then that just keeps your attention because that's the part of the story, and then you keep going and you find something else. Well, that's not by accident. That, you just kind of look for those kind of moments of opportunity and be able to kind of, because you need to keep the attention of the viewer.
Right.
And so that was something that we learned. I mean, I learned big time. These guys knew what they were doing, but I was completely learning.
So you had to look out for opportunities that you could kind of, have your arcs built around.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I had to look for, obviously there is that general idea of what I wanted to do in terms of the storytelling. But then in order to tell that story, certain dots have to be connected. And in order to connect those dots, certain interviews have to be done. And you have to keep your eyes open and your ears open for certain interviews and certain personalities that you may not have heard of, but you're like, okay, we need to add this person on because that person is fascinating. Right. Or, this person is great, but not really fitting it. Let's add another one just to kind of bump up that first person storyline. you know?
And you had some fascinating personalities. I mean, so let's talk a little bit about, you know, the people that you included, the fashion, you know, designers that you included. You know, let's let, you know, everybody out there know kind of a little bit about what the story is that you told.
Yeah, so what we did was we wanted to make sure that we interviewed designers, next generation of designers from a noted fashion school in Jakarta, as well as established couturiers that have made a name for themselves. And then, of course, designers that are in the middle, that are just coming out, establishing themselves, and that's usually through Jakarta Fashion Week. In addition to that, we interviewed an historian who specialized in textiles, and we talked about the batik work, which is very Indonesian. And then we interviewed the editor-in-chief of Chloe Indonesia, who is not a modest wear fashion person, but she talks about how she loves wearing modest wear and she loves incorporating it into her life and into her design element. And, you know, we talked about the modern wear as well, because yes, Jakarta's modest scene is robust, but to break that preconceived notion of Indonesia, there's an incredible modern wear scene out there that really rivals those in Asia and in Europe. It's very similar aesthetics and quite groundbreaking. And so it was really great to be able to talk to these different personalities. So one specific personality that really stood out in our heads, and we just fell in love with him there, and then afterwards was Sir Harry Darsono.
Yes.
And
that was one of my favorite parts of the documentary, because I was blown away that you actually even got him and he showed you the stuff he showed you.
The stuff he showed me. So he is a couturier who was trained in Paris, and he worked in various Paris fashion houses while he was learning. And then he brought his talents to Jakarta. And then he just, for decades and decades, designing fantastic modern wear looks. And
you're getting a shout out from somebody right now. Sansari.
That's my sister-in-law.
Oh,
yeah. Sarah. Hi, Sarah. That's so cute. I'm kind of a little embarrassed now.
So basically this fabulous personality that got all that kind of, you know, education from Europe and brought it back to his country to do wonders with. And he really wanted to kind of showcase the history of his couture. And so he opened up a bunch of museums. He has like 4 in Jakarta. So we went to one, and it was loaded with, I mean, this guy's a collector, loaded with fascinating pieces and his wardrobes and the presentation. And he was so open and warm, and he gave us such wonderful insights into the Jakarta fashion scene. It's mind-blowing, babe.
Mind-blowing. And
I couldn't believe that you got all that.
And it was really interesting. He was so hot. We were there for the entire day. He was so hospitable. He gave us food, and had his model friends come and do the whole fashion show.
Wow.
And it was so interesting, because when I released this documentary last week, he was the most quoted person in all of the feedback that I got.
Yes.
Everyone loved his quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says that the woman is the art, not the fashion. Without the woman, fashion is nothing.
Right.
And I found that it's so fascinating, because mostly everyone that came back and started writing comments on Facebook and Instagram, they were quoting him, that specific quote.
Right.
And I found that fascinating.
Very powerful. You know, Ali Zishan also said that. Remember when we had him down for the Anoki Awards in 2017?
Yes.
He said that, you know, the Pakistani, because, you know, that obviously is a Pakistani designer.
Yes.
As you know, obviously, for those of you who don't know, he's one of the most preeminent Pakistani designers of our time right now, Ali Zishan. And he said that his muse is the female form, is the strength of the Pakistani woman.
Wow.
So it's so interesting, because this is kind of being mirrored also with this gentleman, where he feels the same way, and is, you know, and that fascination that, you know, designers have with the female form, and what the entire fashion world has really historically come from is really showcased in just that one statement that you were able to get for your documentary.
Yeah, and another one that I just thought of right now was going to the Ecole, the Jakarta Ecole School. The name escapes me right now, but it's a well-renowned fashion school in Jakarta. And we interviewed the students of Jakarta, various students from year 1 to their final year. And it was really interesting because they were all talking about how, sure, they kind of pay attention to the Kardashians and they sort of, but that's not their world. You know, they really want to create their own look and their own aesthetics. And, you know, they're all on the Instagrams and the Facebooks and they're all doing the TikToks and all that. And that wasn't, you know, they were really focused on pushing and promoting and supporting and expanding the Indonesian fashion scene. And I love that because, you know, the first thing you want to do is ask a millennial, so who are your influences? And automatically you think it's this celebrity, that celebrity, that celebrity, and that music artist, and that's it. Yeah. These kids knew what's up. They were more focused on that. And the 2 professors who I interviewed, they were from Paris. And they moved to Jakarta and they were teaching the Jakarta students.
Excuse me.
That's okay. They were teaching their students kind of the aesthetics of fashion design. So I found it was very multicultural in the sense of the way that the future generations, the next generations of designers in Jakarta are being embraced and taught and moving forward. Yeah.
And, you know, and you usually think that, you know, eclecticism and, you know, creative, you know, ideology is more of kind of like a European Western, you know, thought process, but it really isn't. I mean, there are centuries worth of deep layered creative genius and, you know, thought-provoking ideologies that comes from, you know, the Middle and the Far East. And you know, I think that you did a great job in this documentary, Hina, to kind of hone in on that as it, you know, as it relates to the modest wear fashion industry out there, because a lot of the designers that you showcase truly showed a huge breadth of diversity just in that small subset of modest wear.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to go to a stat because it's been a while.
Yes.
So I came across this report by Dinar Standard and Reuters. They came across a study. Okay. And they did a report in 2018. And they said that here, now this is just looking at the money power that the modest wear industry has.
Right.
So kind of taking a look at all of that. That Muslim consumers, this is Muslim consumers, not Jewish, not, okay?
Right. So it's not the entire consumer for modest wear.
Yeah, this is the Muslim consumers. They spent an estimated 270 billion with a B.
Wow.
On modest fashion in 2017 alone.
Wow.
That is 1 year. Yeah, and sales are expected to hit 361 billion by 2023.
That is nuts. That is nuts. So for anyone out there that thinks modest wear is just for the people who are from, you know, orthodox religious groups, you are dead wrong.
Yeah, because I'm telling you right now, the Muslims that are buying this, they're not all modest wear wearing Muslims. Like I'm buying this stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
I'm not even Muslim and I'm buying this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can find it anywhere too, because it's not just, you have to specifically look for a modest wear outlet or a modest wear designer. You can take that philosophy and apply it to clothes from Uniqlo, from Zara, from H&M, from
Right. So let's talk about that then, Hina. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what are some good resources? Well, you know, before I ask that question, let me ask you this. How do we define modest wear, you know, out there in the big wide world of fashion, irrespective of looking at it specifically in the modest wear industry? Like, obviously, if I know that this designer is a modest wear designer, I know that conforms to modest wear. But generally speaking, you know, fashion has always had modest wear. So how do we define it before we actually talk about good resources to go, you know, support the actual modest wear industry?
I can tell you, it's anything with long sleeves.
Yeah.
And loose fitting.
Okay.
And that covers your legs. So now take those 3 specific.
That's a lot of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you take a look at the maxis, the skirts that are out there, the kaftans that are out there, the tunics, the sweater, the baggy sweaters, the shirts, the baggy shirts.
Yeah.
It all covers that. It all covers that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk now and give some props to some modest wear designers, maybe retailers. You know, give us some names out there that we can, you know, really support and get behind, you know, the industry a little bit, and not just talk about, you know, your typical, you know, access points like you mentioned, Zara. Sure. And all of
Exactly.
those. Let's support some of the modest wear, you know, fashion designers and resources out there. Yeah.
So first and foremost, you can easily find modest wear at any Shalwar Kameez store.
Right.
Because that's, I mean, it's kind of obvious, right?
Yes.
So having said that,
you're actually making me hungry. I feel like I want to go to eat some Indian food at an Indian restaurant, which I haven't been able to do.
I am fully craving paratha like you will not believe.
Well, then I'm going to have to make you parathas because I make them, and I'm going to have them sent over to your house. What type do you like?
Anything.
Like aloo wale? What type?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
chalo. Ho gaya yaar.
So outside of our South Asian Shalwar Kameez, outlets that we all know and love, here are some modest wear designers that I think you should keep an eye out. So there's one called Modest, M-O-D-I-S-T, the Modest.
Yeah.
On Instagram, and it's great because they have an incredible collection of modest wear clothes.
And what is it? Like an online retail store?
Online, yep, online.
Okay.
And all of these ones are online. You can find them online.
Perfect.
Right. So all of these are online, and the Modest is a modest wear focused store designer, and they have a collection of various modest wear designers as well. And they have a huge Instagram following, so you'll find them on Instagram at The Modest, M-O-D-I-S-T.
Okay.
The Modest, yeah, not .com, Instagram, yeah.
Yeah.
So that is one, right? So we've got that. Yeah. Another one actually is an Indonesian designer. Her name is Diane Pallonji, and we featured her actually we showcased some of her runway shows in her documentary. Yeah. And she also has an incredible collection of modest wear designers. She's like in her mid to late 20s, super young girl.
Wow.
Fantastic clothes, let me tell you. Really, really well done. Right. So now I'm going through my list.
Yeah.
Here is another one that we love. Now, let me just go to Diane Pallonji for 1 second. She was listed on Business of Fashion's BOF 500, and she has 4.9 million followers on Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
That is insane. Exactly. See, that's the thing, right? We think that, you know, if it doesn't exist on our continent, it doesn't exist. But what we don't realize is that there is so much more power outside of North America than we ever give credit to.
Let me tell you, and I'm so glad you said that, because one of the eye-opening things that I discovered when I was researching these designers in Indonesia was their Instagram following.
Yeah.
They all had 1 million.
Wow.
Like, I was like, holy smokes. It shows you that there is a huge community out there that is, you know, supporting these designers.
Absolutely.
And they don't need us.
Yeah. They don't need us.
They don't need us.
I love that.
Another one. Yeah, isn't it?
Because it's not just about this continent, guys. I mean, like, I love my country. I love, you know, living in the Western world. But I have to say that I'm so deep rooted in learning the knowledge, the rich knowledge and the layers of knowledge that we have in and around the rest of the world. Because those parts of the world are older. They have older civilizations, and they have a lot more, you know, strategic, stratified communities, and so much more, what can I say, support around all the aspects of what makes life so rich and diverse. I mean, you know, that's something that we've started to do now here in North America. I would say probably in the last decade, where we're starting to look at like alternatives for mainstream. But the rest of the world has always been on that map. They've always been on that journey where there isn't really a defined line between mainstream and what's considered not mainstream. So I do want to address that. We're finally coming of age here in North America, where we realize that everything is not about the cookie cutter your philosophies. It's not just the black and white that makes the journey of life magnificent. It's all the gray interspersed in between the black and white that just gives us the perfect kaleidoscope of what life should really be all about.
Beautifully said.
Oh, I just don't know where that came from. I was inspired.
So
I'm being told that we've got 3 minutes to go. So I want to just make sure.
Okay.
Can you believe that we've been rabbiting on for the last 60 minutes, darling? And I feel like I haven't even really grasped just how incredible your documentary is. Guys, if you're just joining us, we are getting ready to kind of close up shop here, but you can check out this live for the next 24 hours on Instagram, and it will be indefinitely on Facebook at Raj Gurn. So make sure you do go later on today. We will be posting that because unfortunately we had a bit of a glitch. We weren't able to go live on Facebook. Again, Facebook, you will be seeing this after the fact. Super sorry, but thank you so much for joining us. I mean, unfortunately, we can't do anything about technology, but what we can do is to address the fact that this documentary, the Style Atlas Jakarta, is a tremendous piece of work. Not only is it eye-opening about kind of the journey of modest wear, it's also very eye-opening about the cultures that are outside of the mainstream world that we here in North America live in. And the fabulous Hina is the one that was the creative genius behind it. And I just want to say one thing, Hina, I am waiting for the series of you going around the world and actually going to all of these interesting, little known outside of their own markets worlds of fashion, which is really what your website is all about. Again, give everyone your website address, sweetheart, and please go and update it, because I know there's a lot that, you know, we can learn, and I feel that your portal is the portal to go to. Anyone that's around the world, if you want to know about fashion that is not your typical mainstream high street stuff, you've got to go to Hina's website. Hina, what is your website?
So the website is ramp, R-A-M-P, 1885.com. So yes, it's not updated. However, if you take a look at the stories, you really get a good idea of how global the stories are. So it's a nice kind of little aperitif to what I'm trying to do. And then the documentary is on YouTube. It's called The Style Atlas Jakarta, just like how it sounds, The Style Atlas Jakarta on YouTube. And please check it out. Again, it's family friendly. It's very travel inspired. So even if you're not into fashion and you're into travel, this will definitely quench that travel thirst that we all have right now with the situation. So this is a great way to kind of explore. Don't need a passport. 40 minutes doesn't take a chunk of your time, but you know what? It's well worth it. I was really happy to bring that to everybody.
Absolutely. And if there's anyone out there listening who is on Netflix or Amazon or anywhere out there in the world, you gotta finance Hina and this incredible idea of traveling to different continents, different markets of fashion, and just exploring truly how magnificent the human creative force is. Hina?
And can I just say one last thing?
Yes.
One of the main reasons why I wanted to do this was because I saw there are a few global fashion shows out there.
Right.
But it hosts a blonde white person or someone who is not really of that culture or have that understanding. It kind of turns into I'm the unicorn in the thing and I'm trying it out and I'm not used to it and this is such a foreign world for me, and I didn't want to do that.
Right.
I wanted to talk about it in a respectful, intellectual manner and really kind of showcase this particular fashion scene in that way. So I really wanted to stay away from that, because let me tell you, in one of my pitching, I did get feedback that, we would like a blonde white person too.
Wow.
So I was like, no. I'm not having any of that, and that's why it's on YouTube.
Absolutely. But that's going to change.
Yes.
We want to make sure that, the wealth of creativity and fashion diversity that exists in and around the world gets, equal representation. The types of women the types of ideologies that we have around the world get equal representation, because that's what we're about, Hina. That's what we believe in. And this is one of the many ways that we, you know, support the diversity that needs to exist and get equal representation around the world. And thank you so, so much, Hina, for being a part of an incredible hour. You're always just so flipping knowledgeable. And, you know, we got to do this again, but I want to see the series. Netflix, you gotta pick this up. I'm putting it out there. Love you so much. Thank you so much, Hina.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you so, so much to our world at Instagram and also our world at Facebook. Love you so much, and I'll see you again.